You hear him weekday morning 6 to 10 right here on 97.3 ESPN. KJZ. This is the Z part of the K and the J, as Zubin Mehenti joins me now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Zubin, welcome back, man. How you been?
Good, as the fellows like to remind me this morning. There's a certain hierarchy to the Keyshawn, Jay, and Zubin. But as I told them this morning, can't have a three-man weave without three guys. So
That's right.
Maybe at the end, but I'm doing my part.
Well, you've got to sometimes navigate through, and there's been a lot of talk about Carson Wentz and what's going on there. And obviously, it's a huge topic of conversation in this area. And I know, listening to Keyshawn this morning, he's saying, look, he's getting paid. He's got to be the guy. You hear Jay Will. He's talking about, when did we get so light? Easy on these guys. Where do you kind of stand with what's happening, the way that Carson Wentz is going? Is it logical to think about benching the Eagles quarterback right now?
I don't think so. And, I would just channel the words of that old Eagles quarterback, Doug Peterson, right? I mean, to me, it just comes down to this. And the division is still imminently winnable. The division is not very good. Sure, could Dallas be 3-0? Yeah, they could be 3-0. Could they be 0-3? Yeah, they could be 0-3, but instead they are where they are at 1-2. Nobody's running away with the division. I think Washington is going to regress. I think it's not getting a lot of play because there's so many other bigger stories in the league, like Seattle and what Mahomes did last night and how bad Lamar looked and how good Aaron has looked and what's happened to the Saints and Tom Brady simmering under the radar. One of the biggest stories in the NFL that's not being talked about is Ron Rivera not exactly on board with Dwayne Haskins right now. And so I think that team is really going to struggle. The Giants personnel is terrible and they're banged up. And I don't know what you're going to get out of Dallas at this point. It sounds crazy, but at 0-2-1, I absolutely don't think the Eagles are out of the division chase whatsoever. And if that's the case, who gives you the best chance to win right now? And despite what we've seen from Wentz, just my opinion, I'm not around it every day like you guys are. I'm not watching it as closely as you guys are. But from a macro perspective, when I watch them, you can never convince me that somebody like Jalen Hurts is going to give them right now a better chance to win than Carson Wentz. And right now the division is still in play because of the quality of play overall in the division. If I'm not mistaken, Hurts was actually not active in week 1. I know he's gotten some snaps since then, but you just can't convince me that he's just going to run off the bench and be better than Carson Wentz. Has Wentz struggled? Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's any way around that. But the idea that a guy that like Hurts is going to come in and save your season and salvage you or give you a change of pace, I just don't see that. The sample size is too small. You have zero idea what you're going to get. So I think it's just premature. I understand it's Philly. It's the Eagles. It's Wentz not being able to stay healthy or be consistent. It's full right around the time Wentz danced into the end zone to tie the game Sunday against the Bengals. Right at that moment, essentially, Foles was leading a comeback for the Bears against the Falcons. And I understand those comparisons are always going to be there. But, I mean, just common sense says to me that Jalen Hurts is not going to be able to come in and do better than Carson Wentz, and so Wentz should remain the starter. I don't know if that's too simple or that's too obvious, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because obviously this is his 5th year, and it's like, how many times are you in year 5 still evaluating your guy? Like, normally you've made this decision by then, and it seems that, like, it's going backwards, so it's hard to say, we're going to make the evaluation after 3 games or 5 games. Like, if they're 0-5-1 and he's still playing poorly, do you reevaluate that?
Well, I would say they've already made the decision because they paid him. To your point, I agree with what you're saying. You really don't know what you're going to get. He oftentimes cannot complete a season. Obviously, that's a big trope about him that's been said a million times, even though there are seasons where he's completed 16 games. But I would tell you that, to me, Howie Roseman's already made the choice. They paid Wentz, so I don't think he has to earn it. I don't think it's an evaluation in the mind of Howie Roseman, Doug Peterson, and Jeffrey Lurie. It might be for all the fans, that are listening on 97.5 and your station and WIP. I mean, I think those fans maybe need to be convinced. But I think the 3 most important people in the organization, the owner, Howie, and Doug Peterson, are convinced. Is he struggling? Absolutely. And Peterson's not hedging, but Peterson's also not playing that blind card of he's our guy, there's nothing wrong. He obviously expects more out of him. But for those that say people are still evaluating Carson Wentz, I would say the second they gave him that contract, they eventually said the evaluation is done. You're our guy.
Zubin Mehenti, KJZ, weekday morning, 6 to 10 here on 97.3 ESPN. Yeah, and the one, I get the whole division looks awful. You lost to Washington, so that doesn't make you feel any better. I know the Giants have problems. Dallas, they've had some tough ones. I mean, they lose on the road at Seattle, but I mean, overall, the problem is I feel, Zubin, like people don't see a way out of this. Like when you're struggling because of certain things, like, okay, there's injuries, you might get some guys back, or there was a play here, or there was a play. You're losing to Cincinnati, Washington, and you're losing because your quarterbacks played poorly. That's where I think people are like, I don't know that they turn this thing around.
Two things I would say. One, their immediate schedule is not going to help, obviously, right? I mean, I don't know exactly what the 49ers have, but if they go out and lose to the 49ers, I look at it and just say, you could say whatever Doug Peterson is doing with the coaching aspect this year, however you would want to grade him, and maybe he's largely being graded on the quarterback that he has. But if you look at a team like San Francisco, look, they're out there without their top two runners. The return of Jerick McKinnon's a great story. Their all-world tight end is out. Richard Sherman, Dee Ford, Deebo Samuel, Jimmy Garoppolo, you name it. I mean, and if they go out and lose to a team like that, then I think you really put it on them and say, look, I mean, you're taking on a team that has shed so much talent here. If you can't stay competitive with them, then I would say, okay, it's time to look in the mirror. But as you well know, the schedule for them does not ease up over the next 3 weeks at all. I don't think it's impossible by any stretch of the imagination that they could go 0-3 in their next 3 games. And if that's the case, then I think it's time to reevaluate. But I think at this particular point, you're right. Look, the Cowboys also had a very difficult 3-game stretch. I would say they had one of the more difficult 3-game stretches in the league, even though I know Atlanta is a pretty bad team. I look at it and I just simply say to myself, if you think it's bad right now, I mean, don't you think it's possible if you call me 3 weeks from now, they would have dropped their last 3 games? You think 0-2-1 is bad? I understand that one loss against the Bengals, and you mentioned how bad the Redskins were after the 17-0 lead in the opener against the Washington football team. But if we talk again in 3 weeks' time and they still haven't won a game, I wouldn't be shocked.
Neither would I. 0-5-1, and you might be right. They might be in the division. I mean, you might see a Dallas team at 2-3, you 0-5-1, and playing them twice. But again, it doesn't feel like things are about. And you watch that game last night. You watch Andy Reid, and look, Hardman's a 2nd-round pick. Hill's a 5th-round pick. It's not like they went and drafted these guys in the 1st round. I feel like he accentuates the positives and just gets the most out of their guys. Those guys are playing chess, and the other teams are playing checkers, man. They're fun to watch, and it just doesn't feel – when you watch an Eagles game, it's agonizing. That was fun. Eagles agonizing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with the Chiefs, I think Andy gets a lot of credit. The enemy gets a lot of credit, deserved for both. Mahomes makes it go, but I think the one guy that's not getting credit, we talked about this on the show this morning, is their general manager. They have a 42-year-old guy named Brett Veach, who along with Andy got a 6-year extension. It was pretty quiet when Andy got a 6-year extension. People were wondering, was that going to mean Eric's going to have to go somewhere else? Because clearly Andy still probably has 6 years left in him if his health is there, and I don't think the enemy is going to be waiting for another 6 years to get a job. So there's a lot of discussion about what that could mean for the immediate future of the Chiefs. But what it swallowed up was the other bigger story, which was Brett Veach, their GM, getting a 6-year extension. And I think if you look at what they're doing with regards to fun to watch, I mean, look, they paid Mahomes because they had to, and it's probably going to be a good investment because outside of next year, the salary cap will likely dip next year because obviously less revenues will be coming in because, look at last night's game. There were 250 fans there and some cutouts, but there are 250 fans there. The cap will likely go down, but in subsequent years, it's going to go up. Labor peace is in the NFL for 10 years. They signed a deal right before the pandemic and what had to be some of the greatest timing of all time for the NFL. The TV network rights fees are going to go up. There's nothing on TV that can bring in viewers like Sunday Night Football. It sounds silly like The Big Bang Theory and some of these other sitcoms can do it, but right now, literally, there's nothing on television on a regular basis. Every year you'll get the Academy Awards or something like that. But on a consistent week-in and week-out basis, there's literally nothing that rates like the NFL. So the rights fees will go up, the salary cap will go up, and Patrick Mahomes' deal, if he stays healthy, will largely be worth it, as crazy as it sounds. But Veach brought in Mahomes to a monster contract. He signed Chris Jones, who's a really underrated player that I don't think casual fan is aware of. I'm sure your audience, hardcore Eagles fans, football fans are. And they signed Kelsey to a great deal for a tight end relative to his position. And they still might be able to maintain all these guys, keep Mahomes till 2031, and continue to put guys out there and draft great like Clyde Edwards-Helaire at the bottom of the 1st round. So to me, you're right. The Eagles don't look nearly as fun or as explosive, but I think a lot of the fun and explosive nature of the Chiefs comes from up top. We're so quick to credit everybody on the field, and they deserve it. But Howie's going to have to channel a little bit of this guy, Brett Veach, to make sure they can get back on the right spot.
Zubin Mehenti is with us. KJZ, you'll hear him tomorrow morning at 6, and I'm imagining as you guys are getting ready for that show tomorrow, you've seen this Titans-Vikings thing, and I'm sure it's going to be a major topic of conversation. What kind of blow do you think that is to this NFL season, which seemed to be going so good, and then all of a sudden this happens?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Obviously, with these two teams having played each other, with the Titans practice facility closing down, and then having played the Vikings the previous week, and then with contact tracing shutting down Minnesota's facility, I think a couple things. I think, one, the league has to say to themselves, okay, this is the first time in 2020 that they're playing. I don't want to use a stupid cliche here, but I will. This is the first time in 2020 they're playing defense, right? Listen, free agency is going on, and frankly, if you think back with where we were with the pandemic in March, people actually got caught up in Tom Brady's free agent frenzy. That was a nice respite. They did it. They said, don't put on the draft. 15 million people watched the draft on ESPN. It was a huge success virtually. They did it. They said, we're going to get out in front of it and cancel the preseason. We're going to get out in front of it, OTAs, mini camps, rookie, all that stuff. All that was canceled. So they got out in front of everything. As you know, they've gone as far, Mike, to say, we're going to play Super Bowl 55 in Tampa with a full stadium. I mean, they publicly actually went out and said that because everything that they've done so far is work. Testing, for the most part, has been really good, outside of a couple bumbling tests here with Matt Stafford and some negative headlines that they got. For the most part, it's been very, very effective. But this is the first one where they basically have been told, look, you're not in control anymore. Everything I just mentioned, they were in control of. The biggest advantage here, just, Mike, imagine this happened on a Friday or a Saturday night. Like, what do you do then, right? I mean, at least this happened on a Tuesday. You got 5 days to figure out what to do. If you have the mandatory 10-day quarantine or 14-day, depending on what's going on, what the rule is in that specific state, obviously you'll see what happens. The schedule is, baked in a certain way to make sure divisional games are going to be kept to the fray. Obviously, this weekend would not be a divisional game for Tennessee, but you're also in a situation where you have to look at it and say, if we had 24 hours to make a decision after something like this, if this happened on a Saturday after a walkthrough, when guys got tested after a walkthrough, where would we be if we were playing at 1 p.m., 4:05 or 4:25 on a Sunday? They're probably counting their lucky stars. This happened on a Tuesday, but at 250 Park Avenue in New York, you better believe they're going to be coming up with contingency plans to say, what if this news comes down at the worst possible time? What are we going to do? They avoided it this time around, but I think they know they won't be as lucky down the line.
Zubin Mehenti, they'll have plenty more on that. The NFL Week 4, my gosh, we're already there. And obviously the NBA Finals, you got that tonight with LeBron and the Lakers taking on Butler and the Heat. You got baseball playoffs all day today and tomorrow and Thursday. I mean, it is just crammed in there. And be sure to wake up tomorrow 6 to 10 right here on 97.3 ESPN with KJZ. He's the host, Zubin Mehenti, right here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. All right, Zubin, we'll talk soon, pal.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mike.
As always, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. as Zubin, Keyshawn Johnson, and Jay Will. I've been enjoying that show.